Some of you have been saying yes so often that you don't even realize how much power you're giving away. You say yes to the extra work at your job when you're already exhausted. You say yes to the friend who only calls when they need something. You say yes to the family member who constantly takes from you but never pours back into you. And the more you say yes to everything and everyone, the less you have left for yourself. Let me tell you something. Your yes is valuable. Your yes is a commitment. Your yes is your energy, your time, your resources, your mental peace, and your emotional strength. Every time you give your yes away freely, you are making an investment. But here's the question. Are you investing in something that will grow you, or are you pouring into something that's draining you? Jesus knew the power of his yes. He didn't say yes to every need, every request, every person who wanted his time. And it wasn't because he didn't care, it was because he understood that saying yes to the wrong thing would keep him from saying yes to the right thing. There were times when crowds were calling for him, but he walked away to pray. There were times when people asked for miracles, but he moved on to the next town, because his assignment wasn't to please people. It was to fulfill his purpose. Some of y'all need to hear this. Saying no is not selfish. Saying no is wisdom. If you keep giving away your yes to things you were never meant to carry, you will end up bitter, burnt out, and resentful. And let's be real, some of y'all have already been feeling that way. You've been feeling like nobody considers you, like you're always the one giving, like you never get the same energy back. But that's not their fault, sis. That's because you haven't realized that you are the gatekeeper of your yes. You don't have to explain why you can't make it. You don't have to justify why you're not available. You don't have to feel bad for prioritizing your own well-being. Because every yes you give is a no to something else. And if you keep saying yes to everybody else, you're saying no to yourself. Think about that. Why is it that every time you set a boundary, you feel guilty? Why is it that when you say, I can't do that, or I don't have the capacity for this, you feel like you owe someone an explanation? Some of you have been trained, whether by family, culture, or your own insecurities, to believe that setting a boundary means you're being rude, selfish, or unkind. But let me ask you something. Who told you that? Because that is a lie. Boundaries are not about keeping people out. They're about keeping you sane. They are about protecting your peace. They are about recognizing your limits and honoring them. And if you don't set them, people will continue to take and take and take. Because let's be real, most people don't have a problem receiving. They will drain you emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually because you never put up a line that says, this is as far as you can go. Jesus had boundaries. He loved people, but he also withdrew when he needed rest. He spoke truth, but he didn't entertain people who only wanted to argue. He served, but he didn't let people manipulate him. So why do you feel guilty for following his example? Some of you are out here apologizing for not picking up the phone every time someone calls. You're apologizing for taking time for yourself. You're apologizing for saying, I can't make it. You're apologizing for needing space, for not responding right away, for protecting your energy. And the people who make you feel bad about it, they are the very reason you need those boundaries in the first place. Listen, a boundary is not a wall, it's a door. A door that lets the right things in and keeps the wrong things out. If you don't put up that door, everything, every demand, every expectation, every burden will flood into your life, leaving you overwhelmed and exhausted. And let me tell you something. People will always take advantage of a person who doesn't know how to say no. Not necessarily because they're bad people, but because that's human nature. And here's the hard truth. You don't just set boundaries for them. You set them for yourself. Because if you don't, you will keep overextending, overgiving, and overcommitting until there's nothing left of you. You will keep saying, "It's okay, I'll do it," while feeling resentment deep down. You will keep allowing people to cross lines that should have never been crossed in the first place, and then wonder why you feel so drained. And let's be real, some of you have been so used to being needed that the idea of not overextending yourself makes you uncomfortable. You've convinced yourself that if you don't show up every time, if you don't say yes to every request, people will be disappointed. But hear me. Their disappointment is not your responsibility. You cannot live your life trying to meet everyone else's expectations while ignoring the fact that your own cup is empty. Boundaries do not make you mean. Boundaries do not make you unkind. Boundaries do not make you less loving. Boundaries make you whole. Some of you have spent your whole life trying to keep everyone happy. You shapeshift to fit the expectations of others. You avoid conflict like it's a plague. You go out of your way to make sure no one is upset with you, even if that means betraying yourself. And you've gotten so used to it that you don't even realize it's a problem. But let me tell you something. You were not put on this earth to be liked. You were put on this earth to fulfill a purpose, and sometimes those two things are in direct conflict. Think about Jesus. He was not a people pleaser. If he were, he never would have flipped tables in the temple. He never would have called out hypocrisy. He never would have challenged the status quo. He never would have gone to the cross. Because the people didn't want him to. They wanted him to conform. They wanted him to be quiet. They wanted him to fit their mold. And when he didn't, they turned on him. Now let me ask you this. Are you living for people's approval, or are you living for God's purpose? Because you can't do both. When you live to please people, you make them your master. Their opinions control you. Their validation dictates your decisions. Their comfort comes at the cost of your own. And no matter how much you give, no matter how much you try, it's never enough. Because people's expectations are endless. One day they love you, the next day they criticize you. One moment they sing your praises, the next they find something wrong with you. If you build your identity on their approval, you will be on a constant roller coaster, never at peace, never enough, never truly free. Some of you have been living for the applause of people who wouldn't even notice if you disappeared tomorrow. You've been exhausting yourself trying to be everything for everybody, but when's the last time you asked yourself what you actually want? When's the last time you checked in with God instead of checking in with everyone else? People-pleasing is a trap. It convinces you that if you just do a little more, if you just say yes one more time, if you just bend a little further, then you'll be accepted. But the truth is, you'll never be fully accepted by people whose acceptance is conditional. The moment you stop catering to them, they will move on. The moment you set a boundary, they will get offended. The moment you choose yourself, they will call you selfish. And that's when you know they never really loved you. They only loved what you did for them. So let me free you right now. You do not need their approval to walk in your purpose. You do not need their validation to be worthy. You do not need their permission to be who God has called you to be. If you spend your whole life chasing their approval, you will miss out on your destiny. Because the calling God placed on your life, it requires boldness, it requires confidence, it requires making decisions that won't always make people happy. And if you're too busy trying to keep everyone comfortable, you will stay stuck in a life that was never meant for you. People-pleasing is not love, it's fear. It's the fear of rejection, the fear of disappointing others, the fear of not being enough. But let me remind you, you are already enough. You were enough before they approved of you. You were enough before they liked you. You were enough before they ever clapped for you. And if they stop clapping, you're still enough. Some of you are walking around frustrated, hurt, and disrespected because people in your life don't treat you the way you deserve. You feel overlooked, underappreciated, and taken for granted. But let me ask you something. Have you ever stopped to consider that you are teaching them how to treat you? People will only treat you in the way that you allow. If you keep letting people cross the line, they will. If you keep saying it's okay when it's not okay, they will believe you. If you keep showing up for people who never show up for you, they will assume that's just who you are. And before you know it, you have built a life where your own needs are pushed to the side, all because you never demanded better. Listen, people are not mind readers. They will take the level of access and treatment that you permit. Some of you have been waiting for people to do better, to realize your worth, to finally appreciate you. But the truth is, they won't, not unless you change what you accept. Think about this. When Jesus walked on this earth, he set the standard for how people could approach him. He was loving, but he wasn't a pushover. He was kind, but he wasn't afraid to rebuke. He served, but he didn't let people use him. He knew his mission, and he did not compromise it to fit the expectations of others. But some of you have been compromising your worth just to keep the peace. You've been lowering your standards just to be liked. You've been ignoring red flags just to avoid confrontation. And now you're wondering why people treat you like an option. Because that's what you've shown them you'll accept. If you keep making excuses for the friend who only calls when they need something, they will keep using you. If you keep tolerating disrespect from your partner because you're afraid to be alone, they will keep crossing the line. If you keep doing extra work at your job without being recognized, they will keep expecting it. You have taught them that you will endure it. But let me tell you something. God did not call you to be somebody's backup plan. He did not create you to be walked over, ignored, or treated like you are anything less than worthy. The only reason people keep treating you this way is because you keep letting them. And before you tell me, but they don't mean to, or maybe they just don't know better, let me remind you, they know exactly what they are doing, and they will keep doing it as long as you let them. So ask yourself, what behavior am I allowing that I need to stop? What conversations am I avoiding because I'm afraid of the response? What relationships am I holding on to that have already expired? Because the moment you decide to raise the standard, you will start seeing a shift. The moment you stop tolerating less than what you deserve, the right people will rise to meet you and the wrong people will fall away. And if somebody walks away because you finally demanded to be treated right, let them. You don't need people in your life who only stay when they can take advantage of you. You need people who see your value without you having to beg them to. Ladies, I need you to hear me. You were not created to be exhausted, overlooked, or constantly pouring into others while running on empty. You were not called to be a people pleaser, a doormat, or a backup plan. You were called to be bold, strong, and secure in who God made you to be. So from this moment forward, no more apologizing for your boundaries. No more shrinking yourself to keep other people comfortable. No more saying yes when your spirit is screaming no. No more pouring into people who refuse to pour into you. No more tolerating less than what you deserve. Because you are not just a nice girl. You are a woman with purpose, a woman with power, a woman who is done playing small. And when you start walking in that confidence, when you start owning your worth, setting your standards, and refusing to be treated any less than what God says you are, watch how your life starts to shift. Watch how the wrong people fall away and the right people step in. Watch how your peace returns, your joy is restored, and your strength is renewed. So go ahead and walk differently, speak differently, stand differently. Because the version of you that settles, that's over. The version of you that accepts anything less than respect, that's done. And the woman who knows her worth, she's here to stay. Ladies, I need you to hear me. You were not created to be exhausted, overlooked, or constantly pouring into others while running on empty. You were not called to be a people pleaser, a doormat, or a backup plan. You were called to be bold, strong, and secure in who God made you to be. So from this moment forward, no more apologizing for your boundaries. No more shrinking yourself to keep other people comfortable. No more saying yes when your spirit is screaming no. No more pouring into people who refuse to pour into you. No more tolerating less than what you deserve, because you are not just a nice girl. You are a woman with purpose, a woman with power, a woman who is done playing small. And when you start walking in that confidence, when you start owning your worth, setting your standards, and refusing to be treated any less than what God says you are, watch how your life starts to shift. Watch how the wrong people fall away and the right people step in. Watch how your peace returns, your joy is restored, and your strength is renewed. So go ahead and walk differently. Speak differently. Stand differently. Because the version of you that settles, that's over. The version of you that accepts anything less than respect, that's done. And the woman who knows her worth, she's here to stay.